Okay, colleagues, it's getting a little bit dark here in Nairobi. It's almost 6:30, and I hope you had the chance to stretch the legs a little bit, take that call that was pending. We're gonna start promptly. I understand Loisina is informing me that in addition to Jean-Luc, we have there Hannah Phillips, and I think somebody else is going to also speak from UNWomen. Jean-Luc, is that the case?
Yes, thank you, Jorge. Yes, I'll make just the introductory remark and also to sort of the background of the process, because you remember that we have been starting on that process for a few years already. And then I will hand over to Hannah for introducing the finding of our survey, including the publication that we are producing. And then Verona will come in and give some recommendations on some remarks on the recommendation that we are outlining in the report.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. Verona, good to see you. Hannah, this is an incredibly important topic of the work that we do and we all have to do as part of our mandate within the UN. So I'll pass the floor straight to you so that we can have an opportunity for interaction from other colleagues.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for your introduction. And so I'll just make some remarks just to put the framework around what we have been trying to do in that publication. That, by the way, we circulated as a draft, an edited copy to all of you, I think, over the weekend. So please look at it, because this publication is the result of the survey that a lot of you have participated in, and we couldn't have done it without you. But basically, what we have been trying to do in this publication, in the draft publication, at least for now, is that we want to keep advocating for promoting gender equality and gender parity in the governing body, not secretariats for once, but member states in the delegations. So that's the different angle that we are taking in that one. Of course, we know that we cannot force member states to change the delegation to a gender parity delegations, but we think that we certainly can advocate at our level, at the level of the secretariats, to make sure that they understand that women have to have access to political participation and that their voice can be heard in international forums. So as a background, we, I don't know if you remember, Jorge, but you may not have been there at that time, but anyway, we conducted a survey in 2016, and we produced the first edition of this publication called Shaping the International Agenda publication and we produced it in 2017. And again, we were looking at making sure that there was awareness raising process among member states that it was important that there is a gender parity in the delegations. At that time, we cooperated with, in close cooperation with gender champions and with UNOG based, of course, in Geneva, and they helped us to produce the publication. And we had several launches of this publication with member states, one in New York and one in Geneva, and so there were definitely a lot of interest, and again, it was to raise awareness with member states and to promote gender parity in intergovernmental body and forums. Then we had a follow-up survey that we presented in 2018 at the UNGBS to the UNGBS members. I don't know if you remember that, but we were trying to build on our baseline and to look at how much progress we have made. At the same time, meanwhile, over the last few years, there have been various efforts to advance gender equality within the UN system. The UN Secretary General has made gender equality and parity among the staff its top priority, with the rollout of the Secretary General system-wide strategy on gender parity and the launch of the enabling environment guidelines for the United Nations systems, as well as the publication of the Code of Conduct to prevent harassment, including sexual harassment, at UN system events. This year, 2020, the international community commemorated as well, as you know, the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, where women's equal access to and full participation in decision-making processes was one of the 12 critical areas of concern of the platform. Therefore, we thought that it was timely to reflect on women's equal access to and full participation in decision-making process in the UN and all intergovernmental organizations. So as a follow-up, this year we have conducted another survey, and I want to thank all of you here online that have responded to our survey. And based on this survey, we have compared with our database, and we have compared with the recommendation we had made a few years ago, and we also try to assess how much progress we have made there. Again, as I said, we have shared a draft publication. We were hoping to finish it by the UNGBS, but we couldn't. So this is a draft very advanced. We're almost processing it with edition and translation, but I also would encourage to look at the inputs in there with regard to your organization, so we are sure that we don't have any factual mistakes on what you shared with us. But basically, we are almost done with this publication. We will make sure that once it's finalized and launched, we will circulate it with all of you. It's a knowledge product, and it's also an advocacy tool. And this report will be intended to raise awareness, share lesson learned, and inspire others to commit to action to improve and strengthen women participation, which is critical to shaping an inclusive international agenda. So without further ado, I give the floor to Hannah, with your permission, Jorge, for telling us more about the results of the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Luc, and thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to speak to you and for all your efforts to promote gender equality and parity. So as many of you will remember, the survey was circulated earlier this year, with the response time extended due to the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And thank you to the 30 entities that responded, especially in such a challenging time. And there are 7 categories of analysis. The initial 6 are the same as the first publication, Shaping the International Agenda. And this year we added an additional category to reflect a new area of focus, addressing sexual misconduct. While of course this issue is not new, there has been growing attention and action within the UN system. In 2017, the CEB task force was set up, which among other actions, as Jean-Luc mentioned, they created a code of conduct for UN system events and also a UN system model policy and sexual harassment. So I'll briefly run through the main results by category, and more detail can be found in the draft report that was circulated ahead of the meeting. I would emphasize that the key takeaway is that progress has been made, but there's still work to do to promote gender equality and parity. So the most important part of the presentation will be Verona at the end, talking through the recommendations. So the first category of analysis was explicit policies and mandated targets. So all but one organization reported that they have or will soon have a gender equality or parity strategy, which is fantastic news. However, interestingly, only a small number of the strategies refer to the governing bodies themselves. And less than half of the respondents reported that they have adopted or started to adopt a specific policy on improving women's participation in attendance to meetings. 4 organizations have set specific targets to encourage women's participation. The number of members that indicated reporting to UN SWAP on gender equality and women's empowerment has increased from 16 in the previous report to 24 this year. A new area that we asked about that Jean-Luc also mentioned was the Enabling Environment Guidelines. These were produced by the team I work in, the Office of the Focal Point for Women in the UN System, based at UNWomen, and these guidelines support the implementation of the Secretary General's system-wide strategy on gender parity. And most organizations in this survey reported familiarity with these guidelines, and 19 specifically indicated that they have or will implement the recommendations from the guidelines. So the second category is on tracking and reporting. 18 organisations reported that they formally monitor the participation of women at their annual meetings, and a few have one-off or kind of informal monitoring. Only 2 entities reported gender parity or over 50% women participants in recent meetings. And one of the specific areas we asked about, building on the previous report, was the collection of sex disaggregated data on kind of various items. The most monitored item seems to be leadership positions in bodies and committees, and the least monitored item is facilitators and co-facilitators. The third area of analysis is training and capacity building. Just over half of the respondents reported that the secretary of their organisation had taken concrete actions to encourage women's participation in governing body meetings through some sort of capacity building. 5 organisations reported specific actions to improve the gender parity of panels, which include the Parity Panel Pledge that all the international gender champions commit to undertaking. And 3 organisations reported organising training and capacity sessions activities for women delegates specifically. The next area of analysis is financial support, and obviously we understand that this is a major challenge for a lot of organisations. However, 2 organisations did report that they have provided funding support specifically to women delegates. The next category is advocacy and networking. And I mentioned the International Gender Champion Network, which is a really important group. And in the survey, the leadership of 19 organisations are now members. And 3 organisations also reported developing some sort of technical guidance for improving women's participation at meetings. The next area is communication strategies, and there are a range of communications actions to encourage women's participation. The most common are specifying in meeting notifications that women delegates are particularly encouraged to attend, and systematically using gender-neutral terminology in meeting notifications, throughout the meeting papers, and in the meetings themselves. And the final category of analysis that I mentioned that was new to this year is the initiative to address sexual misconduct. While most organisations reported that they were aware of the code of conduct for UN systems events, only 13 reported disseminating it to meetings participants. However, most organisations reported that there is an available channel for staff or delegates to report on sexual misconduct in the context of governing body sessions. So that was a very kind of quick overview, of the survey results. And as I say, there's more detail in the draft report that was circulated ahead of the meeting. The key takeaway is that progress has been made, but there's still work to do to support and promote gender equality and parity. And we do have practical recommendations. And so I'll hand over to Verona now with the permission of the chair to outline them.
Thank you, Jean-Luc and Hannah for the initial presentations. We're very pleased that this remained as an agenda item in the UN GBS meetings. I know that there have been a lot of interest also to be able to contribute to this work of promoting women's participation in governing bodies. This is really very big area, and we hope that it will continue, and that we will also, as UNGBS, be more proactive in pursuing some of the recommendations. As Hannah mentioned, the recommendations, most of the recommendations have been reflected in the initial shaping the international agenda for the first edition, because we believe that they remain valid. And as Hannah mentioned, there's still a lot of work to be done, although we are encouraged of the progress. We feel that there's a need to reiterate many recommendations because they remain key to realizing gender parity in governing bodies. So, as in the first edition of the publication, the recommendations were tailored to 3 sets of actors, and we felt that this was necessary because all of these actors, namely the secretariats of the UNGBS, which is this body, and the member states, second and third, senior officials, including ministers, ambassadors, heads of organizations, and others. All of these sets of actors have specific roles and specific actions that they need to undertake to realize the goal of gender parity and increase women's participation in governing bodies. So nonetheless, there are common recommendations across the three sets of actors, obviously, and I outlined them in this slide. One is the need to raise visibility, build awareness of the importance of gender parity, and support efforts to advance gender parity in intergovernmental processes. So these range from awareness campaigns to what Hannah mentioned on the notifications, or whenever you're setting up invitations that this is specifically mentioned, the goal of gender parity is mentioned, and also a relative additional efforts like capacity building. So this is now my second bullet of common recommendations: expanding participation and leadership opportunities through capacity building, training, mentoring, networking, and funding, dedicated travel funding. Although, you know, we all know that this is a very difficult area for all of us, but I think there's really it's very important for us to be able to broaden the engagement of women delegates in intergovernmental processes. And then the third bullet, which is a common recommendation across the three actors, is the systematic use of gender neutral terminology. I know that it's not yet automatic for many of us, including us in UNWomen, but just the use of terms, chair, for example, we always still, or most often we say chairman, or less and less though, and we're hearing more systematic use of this gender neutral terminology. And then the fourth bullet, which is very important, and Hannah mentioned this earlier, is the point on sexual misconduct and prevention of sexual misconduct. So we know that there are now some guidance. Hannah mentioned this is not new, but now it facilitates the work because there are some documents, guidance that we definitely, the initial is just to circulate it. So if we start with that, and then of course do more by implementing them. And that's related then to the third, to the last bullet, which is again becoming familiar with and implementing the enabling environment guidelines in support of the Secretary General's system-wide strategy on gender parity. So these are the common recommendations across. And then now I'm going to present just general overview also of the recommendations by set of actors. So first is the secretariats of the UNGBS. And many of you have been doing some of this already, and we just point this out because they're definitely good practice and something that we have to continue doing or broaden. First is the collection of sex disaggregated data. I know that not everybody is still doing this or have the capacity to do it, but it has proven effective in just really just showing the data is an awakening. You know, it's like a realization that, oh yeah, why are we not doing well on this when it's something that that can be done. So collection of sex disaggregated data. And then I think the second bit of that, which is important, is also the dissemination, the regular dissemination, and if we could do it reporting to the boards. Some governing bodies do this already, but I know that you require some decision maybe from your boards, but it would be good to be able to push that. And then The second point is maintaining database of women experts, you know, because we are always, there's always this excuse of we don't find enough women to be in panels or to be co-facilitators, co-chairs, or heading contact groups, and so on. So it would be good practice to maintain database of broad areas of expertise across your thematic areas, so that when something comes up, that that there will not be this excuse of not having women experts. And then the bringing attention to the goal of gender parity through notifications, invitations that we've repeated. The next bullet also we've mentioned. And the point that I want to maybe raise is the creation of a community of practice among the UNGBS members. And through this, I think we can think about some sort of how can we have joint capacity building. I know we've been doing capacity building separately. We have created some tools and guidance, but maybe, you know, how do we make sure that we use each other's resources already, so that we don't reinvent things. And the joint resource mobilization I also mentioned here, because I know that some secretariats, some agencies are able to raise resources. So maybe we can try to, the example we gave was UNFCCC from the survey enacted. So what did they do? How did they raise resources? And how can we then think as a group how to do this together? So those are for the, yeah, and then we can move to the recommendations for member states, please. Hannah, then the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So recommendations to member states. As we know, some of, or maybe most of our governing bodies, we need an intergovernmental decision or a resolution, right? And we know some examples already from the responses in the survey that one way to really make sure that this is implemented is to have a resolution passed aiming for gender parity in governing bodies. So this could be one recommendation for member states. We also mentioned, again, we mentioned this in the last UNGBS, sorry, the first edition of the publication, but it remains valid to apply quotas to their own national delegations. Obviously, we know that we can't go 50% right away, but we can we can have a gradual increase from 30% to 50%. The travel funding is repeated here. Building awareness is repeated here, and also the aspect of the code of conduct. So I just mentioned two important points for member states is also the same, the targeted training and capacity building, and expanding women delegates leadership opportunities within their delegations. And one point that I didn't include here, but something that can that's also important is to appoint gender focal points within their delegations. I know that in the UNFCCC they have started this from 2 years ago, and I think it's an important way to have a focal point within the delegations. Next slide, please. And then we have a whole set of recommendations targeted to senior officials. These are the decision makers within the organizations. Our USGs, you know, the ambassadors, ministers, and other senior officials. So the needs to have a gender equality policy, strategy, and I mentioned action plan. As you know, in some secretariats, they now have gender action plans. I can give the example of the UNFCCC, the UNCCD, for example, and the CBD Secretariat. All of these have gender action plans. So maybe that's something also that we can think of promoting or advocating for. Eventually, it will be the member states and senior officials who will do decision making. And leading by example, so being a member of the gender champions, or when you have like just leading the initiative in resolutions, in decisions, in official statements and remarks to push for gender parity and improving women's participation. And then we know that in intergovernmental processes, we have intergovernmental outcomes, right? So I think the senior officials, part of the recommendation is for them to lead in efforts to strengthen gender-specific references in these processes. So I think I leave it there, and I just listed some discussion points just to kick off the discussion, but we're happy to respond to questions you may have. But as to these things to think about, perhaps within the UNGBS, we can think of top 3 actions for us, for the UNGBS secretariats. And then maybe we can try to focus on these top 3 actions and see how far, and so that we have some next UNGBS, we will focus on those 3 and see how far we've done. And then the next point also is to identify some joint actions. I gave some ideas, but then maybe there will be some ideas from this group as well. And identifying which recommendations to member states and senior officials should we as UNGBS secretariats convey or advocate for. Because I remember from the last presentation, the launch of the first UNGBS, the first publication, the member states asked these questions, like, give us your top 5. What are our top 3 things that you want us to implement? So I think these are the kickoff discussion points that I have, but we also welcome some questions or clarification points. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah and Veronica, for this great presentation. I would just add perhaps a top recommendation as well. It is, or at least one immediate conclusion, it is the establishment of the community of practice. I think that even we can use this virtual platform intersessionally between now and our next meeting, whatever we decide about the next meeting, to precisely dig a little bit on these recommendations and the actions that we will take towards our member states and our senior management, because we have only 15 minutes left for discussion. So maybe that's also something concrete that we can decide upon at this meeting, at least to create that community of practice that can meet a number of times, right? But let us start. Let me open the floor. Colleagues, this is also an incredibly important topic that we have to address, and it's part of our job and our responsibility. So just write in your name if you want to be part of the discussion. I can start by sharing here. I see here we already have a couple of, I may get lost on the list of speakers, but what we can share is we in our relationship with governing bodies, we did have a resolution adopted. There was no focus specific at our last assembly. Unfortunately, it did not address the policy-making organs or the governing bodies. It mostly addressed in programmatic issues, mainstreaming of gender. But we did raise awareness. We are tracking women delegates, and we're telling member states how close or not are we getting to parity, because it's going to take quite some time at the current step, at least for us. Whoever, maybe one of my colleagues can remember, but we are by 2036 or 38, we may be reaching parity, which is very worrying, right? And we've been working also on harassment and informing about codes of conduct. So we've been dying, but I think we can do more in terms of mobilizing resources, in terms of raising increased awareness. So we look forward to being part of this community of practice. I see here very quickly we can speak. I take it WHO FCTC Framework Convention, followed by Gilles, and then UNDP.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly that our COP was postponed to next year, but in the invitation to all the parties, we already include a sentence to encourage them to have more women delegates to attend the next COP and also the meeting of the parties. Also, we just had a look, my colleagues from the WHO governing body are not here today, but we are using the same registration system for the governing body meeting. And in that system, is already created the gender, like woman and man, and then also whether their function is a chief or the delegate or whatever. So we would like to work very closely with UNWomen and other colleagues. In our convention itself, gender issue is included in the convention, has a specific reference to address the gender-specific issue for women. So this topic is dear to our heart, but then apart from all the recommendations, I will not go into the details. It's really important to see who will get into the delegation at the first place. In our case, usually many developing countries will only have one single delegate, and then they have to be in charge of this area of work in their relevant ministry. So we don't have a specific target, but we are doing the checking and the reporting and then raising this awareness. And if some of the documents or the even like colleague mentioned about the good experience or the letters sent by ILO, etc., can be shared with our network, and then we can use already as an example rather than. But then there are things possible. There are things might not be very immediately available that we can do, but at least this is something we can promote together. I will stop here. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we still have a few other colleagues. We can come back after. So we will now move to Gilles. You're already there on the screen.
Good morning, Jorge, and good morning, colleagues. This is Gilles from UNICEF. Let me start with the last point of Leo, right? Leo from WHO. But before that, congratulations to UNWomen. I think it's just extraordinary. I mean, it's a very, very good study, and I'm sure that if we find the way to disseminate that, it will be great. Actually, we are convinced that it's important to have like equal participation to the board in general. But where we can have an added value is to make sure that we get these kind of recommendations to the let's say to the critical ears, basically. And for me, the meeting of the president of the board, you know, very often our president, they have meetings and they discuss critical things. I think this subject is one of the most non-controversial subject that they can discuss and share among themselves which kind of strategy could help them to move forward on that. So my first recommendation is to see how do we disseminate the recommendations, the finding and recommendation of this study beyond the network of secretaries. It will be great. WHO raised the issue related to best practices, good practices. You know, if there is any ILO or any other funds and program that's already manage to have a language in invitations, I think it will be good to share with the whole network, and we all will see how do we learn from that and how can we also use the same way to move forward. So adding that to the invitation is the most easiest things to do. Is a good sentence that is already somewhere. It can be great. So best practices, practical sentences that we can put in invitation, and during the president meeting having that subject being discussed, that study being disseminated will help us to move forward. So let me just pause there, and again, Jean-Luc and colleagues from UNWomen, congratulations. Over.
Thank you very much, Jill, from that perspective from UNICEF. Thank you for joining us as well. I have now UNDP followed by UNHCR.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for that presentation. It was really thorough and interesting, and related to some of the things, points that I took during that presentation. I noted that based on the survey and the results, there were 14 organizations that have decisions or policies on gender parity in the governing bodies, and then there was another point about 16 organizations taking concrete action on improving women's participation in governing bodies. I guess I would just like to hear more from some of those organizations. Frankly, those numbers seem like a lot, which is really encouraging, but given how sensitive the issue is and how it's really dependent on what the participation and the designation from the foreign ministries and such, I'm just wondering how these different governing bodies have passed any policies or decisions on such matters. I can understand, because we've been struggling with this as well. Private sector organization, nonprofit board, you're in control of the people that you invite to your board. But because we're not in control, I'd be very curious to hear from those 14 to 16 organizations that have taken those concrete steps.
That's an excellent question. And probably it was the way the data was created, and you will explain to us, Hannah and Verona, and the way you received it, or if it has been analyzed. You will get, let's hear everyone, and then you will come and answer. UNHCR, Karen, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, my question was actually very much in line to Dalita's. Thank you very much for the very interesting presentations. I would very much like to hear from those organizations and those secretariats who have reached out to delegations to increase participation of women and what their reactions have been. I mean, we can imagine some countries and states are very positive, but I can also imagine that some states are perhaps less so. And we were talking among ourselves in UNHCR before this meeting, and we were actually a bit concerned that being so proactive might actually create a feeling among member states that we are exceeding our brief as secretariat. So I would be very interested in hearing something more from those that have the experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Emer, over to you.
Well, thanks. I can be brief actually, because what I wanted to say is very much along the lines of Dalita and Angelica, because obviously, it's something that we would be very much in favor of, but without a mandate from member states to keep track and monitor and report, it's not something that we would see as Secretariat we can take upon ourselves to do. So it would be very interesting to know based on what mandates other organizations are doing this reporting, and even the process that led to those mandates being adopted. Because as of now in the General Assembly, we just have one very vague paragraph about, promoting gender balance in subsidiary organs of the General Assembly, but there's no mandate to report. And yes, just more details and the community of practice I would also very much support. Thank you.
It's an area where we all need to know where are these 14 organizations, because we all want to be bolder. It sometimes starts in our case, when I came into this office, maybe it's for all of you the same, our registration system did not have gender. You know, you had to find it by the name and, you know, suppose, and then with cultural differences, it's really impossible even to track. So we had to go to depth discussions to put the gender even in the registration system. So there are things that secretariats can do just to make it visible, but others require leadership, right? And so how do we build that leadership within our organizations? We have a few more interventions, and then we will be going back to our wonderful colleagues from UNWomen. So I have ILO and quickly WTO. Thank you, just to share the experience, and this Beatrice Pluchon. So ILO.
Hello, so Angelica Müller speaking on behalf of the ILO. Just to say that we have the ILO action plan, and we have a lot of targets, and in particular also most of our targets concerns the International Labour Conference. It's like our equivalent of the General Assembly per year, but also regional meetings. Already for years we have introduced in our IT systems for the registration and accreditation, we can have sex disaggregated statistics, and we prepare infographics at the end of each meeting in order to show how many men and women participated in each meetings. We have introduced the paragraphs in all our invitation letters, etc. But now sometimes we really see that maybe we really need some more ideas to go further. That's why this community of practice is particularly important for us to see what others are doing. And on the one side, you are perfectly right that gender equality is a consensual issue. But when we wanted to promote like gender equality in the governing body itself, a lot of resistance was raised. For instance, they say you don't have mandate, why you wanted to promote, we are all elected people, we cannot have more women, etc. And for us, it was very delicate exercise to say, okay, we have our mandate to raise awareness, to show you figures. And of course, it's our initiative of the Secretariat, and we have prepared the infographic about the governing body, but it's a very delicate issue how to show them. And again, we don't impose, but just to show that for other ILO activities, the governing body encouraged to promote participation of 45% of men and women, for instance, for like regional or international meetings. But for instance, governing body itself, we have 10% on the employer side or 15% on the trade union side. Like this, without saying nothing, we just show the figures, and it's up to groups and up to GB members in our set to try to take some decisions for the future elections. But it's really not easy exercise how to promote delicately this process, because there are some resistance. And that's why we really need all experience with colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. And I take it that you are fine with helping us set up some form of community of practice that can work intersessionally and learn from organizations such as yours?
We need at least maybe to have like a platform we have in GBS platform also, just at least to see what others are doing, and sometimes by looking what others are doing, we can be inspired.
Excellent. Yes, within UNGBS, of course. So now WTO and Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Jorge. And I will not take much of the time because this is slightly off the main discussion, which is how to promote gender equality in governing bodies. This was just to share some information about an initiative that has been going on for a while among some WTO members to establish an informal working group to discuss and come up with best practices and recommendations on how to increase women participation in trade. So it's not from a perspective of the governing bodies and gender equality, but broadly to make sure that women benefit or reap off the benefits of trade. So there is now this initiative in the WTO with meetings going on at the level of WTO members. And I will stop here. There is more information that I've shared in the chat, just for the information of colleagues. Thanks.
No, but it's about looking at the cross-cutting nature of gender, and I think it's something that we are all seeing in our policy-making organs. And it speaks to something that Verona and Hannah said, that it is that we also have to create mindfulness in delegations to use gender neutral language in the resolutions. And that's an area where even for us, sometimes we forget it because we're in the rush of negotiating. And sometimes we see areas where gender, even neutrality in the language could have helped. We have two last ones because we want to hear. We have Beatriz, please, over to you. Then ICAO, and David, of course, supports the community of practice within this network.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you very much. So congratulations to UNWomen colleagues for updating this publication. I'm very pleased to see that the ball is still rolling. I mean, we've been promoting a lot the first publication. As you know, it's been posted as a document of our formal general conference. So now I'm just wondering if also UNWomen can not only, I mean, finalize this publication, but also think about how we can promote it and maybe develop some slide or some infographics that we could use to promote the publication on our social media or maybe on screen during the conferences, or even if we are using Interprefy for virtual meeting, we could even promote the recommendation on the screen. So I'm really looking forward for the next version of this publication, and if you can help us promote it, that would be even better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I move straight to Andrew, and then we will go back to UNWomen. Andrew, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge. Thank you to all the colleagues. I'd like to echo the sentiments expressed by other speakers in thanking UNWomen for this fantastic publication. It's really helpful. And I say that speaking on behalf of an organization in ICAO, which is less than commendable in terms of its gender balance on governing bodies. We really rate as one of the worst within the UN system. We're aware of that. Even on our governing body, in our council, it's less than 20% of the representatives are women. That's how bad we are. The organization has passed resolutions on this topic, and I just want to address the specific question that was asked, I think, by a couple of speakers, including Emma in New York Secretariat, and also I think it was UNHCR. How do we break this nexus between the Secretariat and the member states? Because as Secretariat, it's a little bit delicate for us to tell the member states, you must send women as part of your delegations, and you must appoint women as heads of your delegation, because their response will be, but we are sovereign, we can do whatever we like. Now, in ICAO, just to give an example, and others are free to use this, this was driven by our member states on one of our governing bodies, the Council, which has formed its own body subgroup. It's a working group called the Working Group on Gender. Basically, the member states themselves are now tasked with the mandate to come up with recommendations to improve the ratio, the gender balance ratio of delegations that attend the sessions, particularly of the Assembly, and who they appoint to things like the Bureau. So the Bureau at the governing bodies would have to be 50%. So by giving them the ownership, that you overcome that issue of is it the Secretariat telling the member states? In this case, it will be the member states themselves who will come up with the recommendations to the other member states on what they need to do to address this issue. So that's one possible option that you might want to think about in your own governing bodies, getting the member states to own this. If they own the issue, then it can be driven forward in that direction. So I hope that helps. You need, at the same time, member states who are very keen on this issue, and you will find them if you look. So that's my advice to everyone. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Emer, for offering to share with the UNGBS the gender inclusive guidelines in the 6 official languages. I think it will be, as you can see in the comments here, extremely useful. So you heard a lot, Verona and Hannah. Over to you.
Yeah, I may start, and Hannah may come in if she has some additional points. But I think I can start from where Andrew left off. So this is also part of what I'm going to say, because I follow, as UNWomen, I follow the intergovernmental process of UNFCCC, CBD, and other environment-related bodies. So it's not actually the Secretariat who is going to push for the passing of a resolution or the forming of a group, but the member states have to own it. And I really like the way Andrew put it, because in the context of the UNFCCC, for example, which I know very well, we as UNWomen, because we're not part of UNFCCC, so we can work with governments or member states parties who are supportive of this agenda item and help them technically, like if they need a language in their resolution, which we did for the UNFCCC, to come up with a decision, a language on that, help on that. And then that's how it started. So obviously the Secretariat should be neutral. So you shouldn't be appearing to be pushing something. But if there are other, it may be UN entity, it may also be NGOs, like again, including in the UNFCCC context, there is a women's constituency, women's groups, women body there, like a women major group. And they were working with member states. So, at the end of the day, member states will have to give the mandate. That's right. But it's also true, what our colleague from ILO mentioned, that as UN secretariats, as secretariats of these governing bodies, that we have the responsibility to build awareness, to show the data, to give infographics. And one point that's also very important from my experience is finding really this funding participation. Because as we know, funded participants, mostly from developing countries, it's only one slot. So how do we make sure that there is women in the delegation ensured? In the context of the UNFCCC, again, they found some member states or some NGOs to support this, to get some funding to start the process. And then eventually some member states will expand the funding or funding from foundations and so on. So that part. And then last part, sorry about that. The informal working groups. This has worked very well also in the process that I followed. Women's or gender advocates, not just women, but gender advocates forming informal groups within the governing, in the context of the governing body meetings. And these are sort of the go-to of advancing the gender agenda within the governing body meetings. I'll stop there, and Hannah, over to you.
Thanks, Verona, and thank you everyone for all their comments. Very glad to hear that this will be helpful. Just to say on the kind of how organisations passed their resolutions, the survey didn't collect the kind of how data, but it's good, you've heard from some of your colleagues here how that happened, and that also might be something for the community of practice to take up. But we obviously do have the organisations that report that they do have the resolutions, so we can share the names of those organisations. And yes, we will promote the report, and we will help you, and you can help us promote the report. I think those were kind of all the specific questions. But again, thank you very much, colleagues, for the comments and attention.
Thank you to both of you and Jean-Luc that had to leave. So I believe that we will therefore establish this community of practice, and because it's not about so much of guidelines, but just getting it done right with whatever we can do. And we will see in the summary of our meeting how we capture that. And I think it's something that we can structure together with a follow-up discussion in this virtual mode with other issues that I've heard, maybe on decision making and others, so as to create a compiled agenda. But we will be working intersessionally with you, Hannah and Verona, to find concrete ways that we can report to our next meeting on progress achieved. So thank you. We need to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the presentation of another tool that is there to help us, that I believe that we can use better now that it's there. And that is a wonderful initiative proposed 2 meetings ago, as a matter of fact, by Ravi from UNITAR, that's been progressing, and now we're ready to, I believe it's been launched, but just to, how can we use it? How can we make it part of our everyday work? So Philippe and Malcolm, over to you.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, good afternoon, everyone from Geneva. And on behalf of UNITAR, I hope that everyone is doing fine in these special days. So as you just said, my director, Mr. Rabi Al-Haddad, unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today, but I think many of you know him already. And that's why Malcolm and I have the pleasure to give you a brief introduction on the new UNGBS website that you see on the screen that Malcolm is sharing now. The aim of this brief introduction is to present to you the outstanding results of months of work embodied by the brand new UNGBS website. It's a tool that will really enhance information sharing, it will deepen the collaboration, and it will strengthen our coordination among UNGBS members. Very quickly, that website will help you to keep up to date with the content of UNGBS meetings and all other relevant materials. And as a user, you will also be able to follow the news, have a look at UNITAR's events and courses, and also access our digital library and publications. So I would like to thank, first of all, the UNGBS members who provided their feedback in the designing phase of the platform. And I also want to thank the developers whom we worked with, who are based in Catalonia. And we hope that the results of the website will match what are your expectations for it. So I will now give the floor to my colleague Malcolm, who will provide you maybe more technical details about it and who will show you in a nutshell how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's my pleasure to present you to the outstanding work, as Philippe mentioned, of the past months regarding the UNGBS platform. So as you can see, I'm currently sharing my screen. So as you can see, this is the website as it appears to everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean the different users. So we have the non-logged in user who might be able to access only some parts of the website. So the news and events, for example. So accessing the news related to UNGBS and UNITAR related events. And then we have the user who is a member. So the member will be able to access all the parts of the website and we'll be able to download the resources. As you can see, I will now click on resources and show you that we will have you can upload all the resources relating to the UNGBS meetings. So that will be part of the exclusive features for the members. Then if you become an editor or an administrator, you can also develop pages and edit pages, edit content, so you can upload everything you want to upload under any of the sections. And in that case, you will be redirected to this other website, which is developed by DB Builder or WordPress. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this website developers, but they're very intuitive and straightforward. However, we also have a very comprehensive manual for users, which is 40 pages, but very, very easy to follow. And it will explain in details how to amend and modify all the pages. So as you can see, you can basically, for the meetings, you can just go on the meetings, you can add a new meeting, and then you will, of course, once you add a new meeting, you will then add it on the main page, which is under meetings. And as you can see now, we've tested by uploading some UNGBS meetings from the past, the Paris 2019, Geneva 2018, and then as you click on the meetings themselves, again you will have all the content of the meetings. And then we also have a very cool feature that the new website will be under consultation. So under consultation, you will be able to upload surveys so that you can get feedback on any given topic. And then you can also, under community, you also have the forum and the messages so that we can all stay in touch and all members can post anything related to a specific UNGBS meeting or message privately among yourselves on anything related, again, to the UNGBS meetings. And the last part I would like to show you would be the events, news, and lifelong learning, as you can see here. In this part, we have all the UNITAR related content. And if you, for example, if you click on the digital library and publications, you will be able to access all the UNITAR resources and material that we've been publishing throughout the years, such as the manual for UN delegates, the glossary for UN delegates, the UN system chart, the rules of procedure, or any other the practices of diplomatic protocol in Geneva, public diplomacy, and all UNITA's resources. And of course, we will be uploading more in the coming weeks and months. And then under events, you will be able to access UNITAR events. And events and also e-learning activities, such as our UNITAR events and e-learning activities, such as the e-workshops that we've been carrying throughout this month, and on any given topic, such as namely digital diplomacy, women's leadership, conducting negotiations. Even we're planning on doing something on, again, even the digitalization of diplomacy and negotiations, so how to conduct negotiations online. And this will all be under this section, so you will gain access to that as well, and then redirect you to the main UNITAR website as well. But as of the old website, it's pretty straightforward, very intuitive to navigate. Again, if you want to access and enable the visual builder, which is very, very intuitive, as I was saying, you will be able to then add topics and content just by clicking on, for example, on this symbols. It's very self-explanatory, so it will be very easy for anyone who would like to share topics or share anything related to the UNGBS meetings. And again, if anything is needed related to technical assistance or any other support you need, we will be more than happy, the UNITAR team happy to share with you further assistance and further knowledge on how to navigate the website. And again, we will then share with you the user's guide and all the other related resources needed to actually navigate the website. I will also post in the chat now the actual link so that you can give a look yourself and familiarize with the website. And again, happy to discuss further if anyone has questions or comments. And if Philippe, you want to conclude, please take the floor. My presentation is over now. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Maybe just one last word on my side. The platform and the website do work, but they would work if all of us, participate and contribute. If we use the forum to chat, if we use the resources to either access them and upload them, that's how I think we can strengthen the collaboration between UNGBS members. So thank you again, Malcolm. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, we will, and thank you to both, and convey our gratitude to Ravi. Let me ask you to mute Malcolm, if you don't mind. There's still a bit of background noise there. Thank you. So my point here, colleagues, is that this will not work if we don't use it. And I think that one commitment that we can take, and I see all the great comments, it is some of the things that I've found, and I think we've all found super useful of this platform. It is its ability and the solidarity that we have to answer the snap polls. And sometimes we do it by email, and which is great. But if we were to agree that from now on we will move to this platform and agree or commit, in our own words, to post our snap polls here by only using UNGBS instead of the email, I think that we're making already a great progress in making this useful and a live tool. The second element, it is the community exists by updating our contacts, and that's also something very useful that we use, because we need to contact another secretary or another colleague that may have a document that we need, or that may have a tool, an advice, a hint, a recommendation. And if we build up that community section in ensuring that our details are accurate, our organizations have all the right people there that work on secretariat matters and that can be reached out very quickly, I think it's also a way of making this resource live. And finally, it's all about us posting the information that we have that we find useful, news, events, tools that are out there. And I think that if we make that commitment, something that we can definitely deliver. By the time we meet again, we actually have a platform that it's our go-to place, right? So with those remarks on my side, let me open the floor to see if there's comments, suggestions on how to improve it, an agreement to really move towards and own this platform, because it's extremely useful. And it's not easy, as we all know how difficult it is to update our websites. It's not easy to do it just on such a pro bono basis and such an open way by UNITAR. So thank you for that. Does anyone wants to chip in the discussion? Just right here, we see a lot of congratulations. Any comments? As we hear the comments, can you just reassure me, Philippe, that the interface is ready-made for us to develop a snap poll? For example, if I want to know the ones that we usually do, you've seen them. Please answer that on the snap polls.
Yes, it should be feasible. Yes.
Okay, so we will try a few and see how it works. Yes, UNDP Dalita, over to you.
Hi. Yeah, I do have a question about the survey and the snap poll section. Is it that we upload the document with the questions, or is it a space where we just include a link to, say, a SurveyMonkey or another poll? I guess I'm just a little bit unclear on that one. And I would make a suggestion to everyone that if we can start using online surveys, I think it's even just easier for your own collection purposes in terms of just tabulating results and seeing everything in charts and graphs and such. And so just a suggestion to everyone to use these different online tools such as SurveyMonkey and the rest, as opposed to, I'm sure it's a really arduous task for you all to compile all those written responses that we're sending. But yeah, if you can just maybe go into detail on what that section of the site looks like.
Absolutely. I don't see any other speakers, and we have 5 more minutes before we need to move to the next section. So please answer. I just see congratulations, and we'll do it. But please, Malcolm and Philippe,
yeah.
How will this be useful for our snap polls?
Yeah, so thank you for your questions, and thank you for the compliments. Thank you very much. So the survey, so if you go on the survey, under consultation, you will have the survey section, as I showed you. You click this, was just an example that was uploaded on August 27, as you can see. And this is embedded, so it's a survey which is embedded in the website that you will be able to create if you go on the dashboard, like on this UNGBS members only section. And you can embed a survey within the website. But as I said, it's up to us the way we use it and the way we implement things, and we can shape it the way we want. So technically we can also use the, as you were mentioning, the SurveyMonkey and include a link and go straight forward to the SurveyMonkey link. And that would also be an option. We at UNITAR use SurveyMonkey a lot as well. It's very, again, self-intuitive and very straightforward. So it depends upon us basically. But again, if the more we engage with it, the more we get familiarized with it, the more we actually make this platform look great.
Oh,
and
okay,
again,
that's great. Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't realize that it was actually, you could form the surveys through the site. That's really nice.
You can definitely do that.
I think what would be helpful, if this is customizable, and now that I'm looking at it, it is, yes, I think we should, instead of pointing to an external site, because this has security elements that are interesting for me, so only registered users could access that, and you can have a little drop down in the title of the survey, and because it's really good for us to have them all there cataloged, because there's questions sometimes that I have a chair that asks a question, and I remember, oh, there was a survey about that last year, and then we have to dig in the email. So if we could keep them there, have them customized as we progress, drop-down menu to just make sure that the organization, we know which organization has responded, so it also creates greater accountability and reassurance that the information is kept private for the users, that the organization that's requesting the data has done it. It would be great. So I think you've answered that. We take the commitment. I see Ulf here, you have a a contribution, and then we have to close this. I think we all agreed to move on, modernize ourselves, drop the email, use the tool. Over to you, and then we'll move to the next section.
Yeah, thanks. I was just thinking that for this to work, we need some kind of routine, some practice, like all the good routines. For them to work, you need to have somebody responsible usually, and even though we might, I'm sure we will, use this platform once in a while, but still, for each secretariat, if we have someone who could feel a bit responsible for this, and kind of maybe also reach out to you guys at UNITAR once in a while, and you could also have them on your list if you want to kind of point to something or a new feature or whatever that could be available. So it's just a practical idea. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for that recommendation. And so we have agreed to move to the new UNGBS platform to update our databases there, and to from now on publish our snap polls there, which I think it's a great step moving forward. And we will be following up with you, Malcolm and Philippe, and any colleague that wants to launch a snap poll. We don't want to centralize information, and I think that's something very useful of UNGBS, that any organization can just launch the snap poll and get solidarity. So we need you to keep on to that, and make sure you reach out to UNITAR when you want to launch the next snap poll, or maybe we'll launch it us, UNEP. Let's think a snap poll that we can launch there for sure, just for testing purposes. We have come to the almost last item of our workshop, and if I remember well, because I moved my iPad here, Loisina, it's next steps and wrap up, because we have to finish soon. We have been keeping time quite well. This has been an extremely interesting discussion and a great opportunity, and we have seen that we have made great progress since our last meeting. Today, the purpose of this last point of discussion, it's really simple, and myself, together with the next chair of this wonderful network, Ruth Miranda, we had a little consultation, and so we thought that it would be good first to hear from you on where you would like us, hopefully, if this pandemic allows us, of course, we can only hope, the venue of the actual in-person meeting in 2021, hopefully, if conditions allow. We have taken the agreement that this would be done in New York. If you remember, it's a decision that we had already made, that our next meeting would be in New York. But I also know that many of you wanted to come to Nairobi, and we're also very happy to host you here, UN Habitat and UN, the three of us, extremely happy. So we decided not to leave that open, and to hear from you, but also to hear from you, how do you see us working in the between now and the date of our next meeting, which even now I think it's a bit premature to define when the next meeting can take place, given simply the uncertainty that we're seeing on the way we work. And so those were some of the comments. Let me, because I saw that Ruth is there, would you like to come in now, Ruth, and then we just hear thoughts and perspectives from colleagues in the network?
Yes, Jorge, thank you. I'm here. I'm joining from UN headquarters. I just wanted to add, yes, we had offered last year to host the next session in New York, but at this point, I really don't know when it would be possible to host it in New York. We are also dealing with a number of postponed meetings that need to take place in New York. So I really have to see what would be, if at all possible, would be the best time to have the meeting. But in New York, I don't see it, happening in the beginning of 2021. So we really have to see when it would be possible to have it in person in New York, pending on the situation with the COVID, as well as the availability of rooms in New York, because in addition to all the meetings that were already scheduled for New York, we are getting some that have been postponed that need to be taking place as well. But we, we would definitely like to have you all in New York, if the circumstances do allow. Thank you.
And we also would like to have you in Nairobi if the circumstances allowed. So perhaps to frame this discussion a little bit more, it is the opportunity if you have one, we are seeming that we want to keep on working, and this is a concrete proposal during this intersessional period with flexibility and regularity as well. One, by strengthening the online platform. Two, by establishing a community of practice to continue working in gender. I've also heard great interest in going a little bit more into detail on decision-making processes in virtual or hybrid scenarios, because this doesn't seem to be going away anytime very soon. So we foresee that 2021 will still remain as a year with a lot of complexities in our work as secretariats, and certainly not going back to a full normal. So what we think is that if you want, we can keep on working through this workshop, ambience. Maybe we can schedule one. We can share leadership as we have always done. The other option is if you have strong preferences for the venue of the next meeting, whenever that can be scheduled, it's your time to say it. And basically any issue that you would like us to keep on working, that this is the opportunity that you have. So we have 15 minutes now for this concluding discussion. If anyone wants to add in terms of the next steps, you're more than welcome. I don't see, perhaps it takes a little bit of moment to upload this, but if there are no strong suggestions on this, then let us take the agreement that, until we have more information and until we can define, I see here, to continue discussion, decision-making virtual or hybrid meetings. We see that as an interesting area where we need to work, and many of us are having important conferences in 2021. We would benefit from that. So we take it that we can continue working virtually, and perhaps scheduling in a form of a follow-up workshop, very flexible as we have done in this one, a meeting of the community of practice on gender issues, continue working and discussing this decision making at virtual or hybrid meetings, and updating and sharing information on the platform itself. We will therefore defer to next year the decision on the hosting of the in-person meeting. As you see, Ruth and myself are all keen to host you, but we are facing uncertainties in terms of space, limitations, and regulations. So at this stage, it's a bit early to define when will our in-person meeting will take place. But whatever is the scenario, you can count that we will be working together with DGICM to prepare the next steps and the next meetings. So I don't see any more comments on this. I take it that we're all in agreement, and we can adjourn early this first virtual workshop. At least we innovated there. We held a virtual workshop of UNGBS. Thank you all. Unless there's anyone else wishing to take the floor at this point in time, I want to really appreciate sincerely that you took the time to connect, and you were here very participative. We will be working on, as we promised, a note analyzing the first discussion that will be open for your review and inputs. We do believe that this can be a very interesting paper that can be maybe published or made available to our just available in a public way, because I do have seen, here and there in Twitter, a lot of interest on how the UN is adapting and how the UN is innovating. Sometimes erroneously, there's a lot of misinformation thinking that the UN has been slow to adapt and innovate, and I just don't see that. I don't see the evidence. I see everyone working from their houses, and we are a global organization, and I do think that we can share a positive story. So we will be working on that note, on that sharing the experiences from a positive angle. I do believe that will help us add value to the work that we're doing. It will be open for comments and discussions, and we can take it at our next meeting. We will keep on advancing the issues of gender and using our wonderful platform to really embrace it and change the way we work. So I see here very positive comments. Thank you all. We're just 10 minutes from our expected closing time. On behalf of the wonderful team of governing bodies, thank you very much for supporting this, and the team, Loisina, and all of those that have made this possible. They're eager to welcome you in Nairobi, I have to say, and they have prepared so many wonderful things here that we really hope that you have time to visit us, and that this situation gets better, and that hopefully sometime next year, if you want to come here, and there are rooms, of course, you are welcome. This is a very important UN headquarters that also needs to get more visibility. So great conversation, and we'll be in contact for our next workshop. Anything else to add, Wolf? Anyway, good. All right.
Thank you, Jorge.
Oh, it was a great meeting. Maybe to thank Luisina in particular for putting this together.
Yes, especially Luisina, who's been carrying the heavy load. Thank you, Luisina.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye. Bye.